Oregon wide receiver Evan Stewart announced that he is returning to Oregon in 2025 rather than declaring for the NFL draft. And that is stupendous news if you're a Ducks fan. And it is, once again, keeping with this narrative that I think we're going to have in 2025 of Oregon absolutely positively running it back. What that means for the Big Ten, what that means for them, what that means for college football, let's talk about it. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, welcome. Please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so you don't miss any of the segments that we do, like this instant reaction to the news that we do pretty regularly. We talk college football here 24/7, 365. If you're a returning viewer of the show and you have not subscribed, I'm going to ask you to do that. Like the video and leave me a comment. Do you think that Evan Stewart returning to Oregon is a big deal for Oregon and college football, or do you think that it's just more of the same? I can go either way on this, but I'm inclined to take this as a harbinger of things to come. And also, keep in mind how this season ended, not just for Oregon, but for Evan Stewart. Harbinger of things to come. You've got Dante Moore, who you think is the heir apparent, right? Tez Johnson comes out and says, I think he's going to be a Heisman finalist. You look at the schedule, it's not hard to see them back in the Big Ten championship game, if not winning it. Then you add DeCorian Moore to this, and DeCorian Moore is the best wide receiver in this class for me and a top 10 composite recruit for everybody. He's going to help you take the top off the defense and certainly going to help you spread the ball around. But Evan Stewart is, I think, going to be the #1 on this team for good reason, right? He was already pushing Tez Johnson for that moniker until he suffered a lower back injury that had him sidelined for the Penn State game. They ended up winning that game, but you could see the absence of an Evan Stewart showing itself against Ohio State. I'm not sure that Ohio State would have cared that Evan Stewart was in this game, but I do want to point out the first time that Evan Stewart was available for Oregon against Ohio State, he had 7 catches for 149 yards, 2 TDs, including 169 yards, and this is the famous Denzel Burke got torched game. There's lots of folks that are now pushing back going, hey, he looked fine ever since. I'm going, yeah, all right, cool, but that's on tape. And if you're Evan Stewart, you want more of that on tape. Now, would it help if Denzel Burke was playing at the caliber that he was playing last year? Sure, I think so. That might have actually helped you get to the NFL, but 48 catches, 613 yards is not what Evan Stewart wants to be remembered for at Oregon. He wants to be remembered for helping lead that team to its first ever national championship in program history. And I think they're in a good spot to do this. You're talking about a guy also who's got 4.3 speed. They're going to reload, if they haven't already, at that running back room. Like I have a hard time picking against Oregon to compete in the Big Ten championship. And I think one of the reasons that I want to talk about Oregon more often now is A, they have won it. B, they are a signal of the strength of this conference. And going into the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl, we could end up with the all Big Ten national championship game that we've been teasing for some time. But the best 2 teams in that league had been Ohio State and Michigan, and they played in the same division up until this year. Then we got away from divisions, which means that we could get Ohio State and Michigan in a conference championship game. And here comes Oregon, right? Here comes Indiana. I think USC is going to rebound and come back strong. I think UCLA is working towards something that could be cool. Who knows what the hell Washington is going to be? The only team that I'm really not as high on, I think right now, has got to be Northwestern, but that's because they're Northwestern. It's not because David Braun had done a good job. I mean, they won 8 games in his first year. So the strength of that conference in 18 teams is going to be, once again, I think, on display for everybody to see. And if Penn State can beat this Notre Dame team, you're talking about a Penn State team that couldn't beat Oregon, lost the Big Ten championship, but beat a Notre Dame team whose only loss before that would have been 16-14 to Northern Illinois, and a Notre Dame team that beat the SEC champion in Georgia. Now, Georgia didn't have Carson Beck. They'll be the first people to tell you that. They also didn't have no wide receivers that could catch the football. They also couldn't run the football, right? These are things that Oregon has. They have a quarterback that you trust, at least in talent now, right? Dante Moore needs to prove it on the field because it was up and down his true freshman year at UCLA, but I thought he did really well given the circumstances and given what he was asked to do. I think Will Stein's offense, also having a year to just be behind and be the understudy for Dylan Gabriel, is only going to help him. Like I truly believe that dude's got it. He can go play. Now, the quarterbacks are going to be outstanding in this league next year. We're talking about Bryce Underwood at Michigan. We're talking about Dante Moore at Oregon. We're talking about perhaps Julian Sayin, I think, is the guy for Ohio State, if not already. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun, but the wide receiver group is going to be nasty. Like, Jeremiah Smith is coming back. Evan Stewart is coming back. We keep going down the list on this one, man. You got dudes that have left the Big Ten to go to the SEC because, frankly, it didn't go that well for guys like Zachariah Branch. I still think that's an All-American. That's a guy that had 47 catches this year. That's a dude that is lethal in punt return, kick return. All you got to do is give him the ball, watch what he do with it. Evan Stewart is that kind of guy. You know, I think you're also looking at this and you're going, what happens if I'm on the football field at the Rose Bowl? Now, could that be hubris? Sure. But it takes a measure of hubris to play wide receiver, let alone play football at that level and to believe that you're supposed to be there. I think his frame is the one thing that you're really going to ding Evan for. But when you got speed like he got speed and you look like Zay Flowers out there, I mean, let that stuff go, man. Throw that dude to football. Find ways to get him the football more often. I think that he is absolutely going to be challenging for the Biletnikoff Award that we already probably tried to give to Jeremiah Smith. But at the end of this day, I really do believe we're talking about an Oregon team that can be good, if not great. And great means winning a national championship. They know now that they can win the Big Ten. They know now they can beat Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State. They just couldn't get it done in the one game where you absolutely get it done or you go home for the rest of the year. Or the rest of the season, not the rest of the year. That's really difficult to stomach if you are an Oregon fan, and particularly if you're Dan Lanning, because your entire brand is built on being tough and out-toughing your opponent. Come hell or high water, you're going after it. You're going to be aggressive in everything you do. And on that day, Ohio State just had you pasted to the wall. And they know that about you now. But you know what? If it's Ohio State and it's Penn State in the national championship game, one, you get to say we beat both of those programs. Two, you got to feel really terrible because you know that you beat them. You know that you're good enough to have won the national championship this year, in a year where it's never felt more wide open to me, frankly. And that's why we're talking about this. I think as we continue to talk during the offseason, we're going to look at this Oregon roster and we're going to see that it's almost as good, if not better, than the one that they had this year with guys that are joining up like Dylan Thieneman, like guys like Bear Alexander. Like, they keep pulling dudes out who want to play at Oregon and who are, frankly, really, really good football players. And they're not shy about the name, image, and likeness. Now, that is coming to an end, I think, because we're getting into the salary cap era of this. And frankly, Ohio State and Texas are already way out in front on this one. So we're going to see a change to the business model once again for players. But this is the time for you to start really stockpiling players and signing them to contracts that don't make it so easy for people to enter the transfer portal like they did this time. Talk about 1,600 guys that entered the transfer portal. And so many changes, particularly at the quarterback's position, where if you were a decent quarterback, you probably got paid to go somewhere else. Like, I'm thinking about guys like TJ Finley, who is at Tulane now, after Western Kentucky, after LSU, after Texas State. It's like that. And if you are an outstanding wide receiver like Evan Stewart, you could have put yourself into the transfer portal and probably made a ton of money. But it says more that he wants to be at Oregon right now, given what they have. And I think this is the clearest indication that Dante Moore is absolutely good, because if you're a wide receiver, you depend on service. And if the quarterback ain't no good, you ain't staying. Well, we know Evan Stewart is good, and we know that Evan Stewart's going to get service. How good is Oregon going to be in 2025?